Miss Robynne?
Yes.
Are you ready?
I stay ready, Aaron.
You know something. Everyone else ready? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, folks. You are listening to Square Biz Podcast here at Flojuane Square, Sacramento's Black Wall Street, 2251 Flojuane Road, right here in South Sacramento. And I am your host, Aaron Boyce, and I have the wonderful other host, and her name is
Robynne Rose Haymer.
Okay, now see, I could have said that a lot better. Robynne Rose Haymer.
That's just a lot louder. That's not better.
That's louder. Okay. Well, it's only because of my accent. People know who watch the show. Whenever you are there, whenever you're my host, I get excited because you're Robynne Rose Haymer.
This is true.
Okay.
I detect no lies.
Okay. All right.
That's cute.
And I have some wonderful guests. Dr. Flojuane Cofer. Did I say that right, Dr. Cofer?
You said it with a question mark because you were everything other than Flojuane Cofer before I weighed in on the subject.
Okay, wait a minute. That was a me and you thing. Okay. Wow.
I had to explain to my friend Flo why there was this confusion around the name, and there was like a hesitancy, especially since Flo knows I know Flo. So there should be no confusion when it comes to Flo and my familiarity with Flo. So I had to explain that Aaron didn't know what he was talking about. And so I don't want you to feel any kind of way about
there are some confused people who call up
my sister.
Flojuane.
Yes. Well, so that's the thing. I am not great. If I know you're talking to me, I don't really feel like, listen, my mom and them decided to name me this super complicated name that is French, even though I now live on the West Coast. So a lot of people call me Flojuane. People, decide it's fancier than it is. It just means yellow flower in French. So as long as you get the flow part right, and I know you're talking to me, I just don't sometimes bother to correct people. So that's why there's a lot of pronunciations out there, but it is Flojuane, and thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And thank you for being so much nicer than Robynne Rose Haymer. Thank you very much. Okay. And we have the wonderful Kim Stevens from the Stevens Foundation.
Yes, sir. Live here in effect. Kim Stevens with you from the Stevens Foundation, as well as AYF NorCal Youthful Volunteer.
Now, so those who've been watching our show, it's gonna be different because this is our first Zoom event. Normally, you guys know I like having you guys in the studio where I can bump elbows, okay, and talk with each other live and in person. But we're going to do it Zoom and see how it turns out. The good news is that I can breathe. Oh my goodness. Unless somebody really feels like they think that I should wear the mask. But other than that, there'll be no mask. And I'm very, very happy about that.
Aaron, we're Black. We always wear a mask.
Huh? What?
There's a whole book about it.
Okay.
We wear the mask.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So I am very fortunate this episode to have some very, very, very educated people up in here.
Very
educated.
And
so if I feel the need to just be quiet, that's what I'm going to do and let these very, very, very educated people speak. I did want to just make mention that we're very excited here at Flojuane Square. We had the soft opening of the Sojourner Truth African Heritage Museum, which just was expanded, and the soft opening was last weekend to coincide with the African marketplace. I went in. If you guys have not gone in yet, you have to see it. As wonderful as it was before, now think of it as being more expanded. It's larger with a lot more stuff in it that represents us. It represents us in a way that now you press a button and it talks to you. Yes, folks, it's interactive. And might I add, this is still just phase one of a multi-phase project, because in the next few months, it's going to expand even bigger. So our goal is to make the museum probably about 4,000 to 6,000 square feet. Okay, so phase one is done. We're very happy about that. And in fact, we're going to have a more formal grand opening on March 20th. And keep posted, because we're going to share with you all of the details as we move ahead. But just put that on your calendar, March 20th, for the grand opening of the Sojourner Truth African Heritage Museum. Hey, Ms. Robynne, anything happening new in your world?
Let's see. I think that the COVID vaccination lifestyle of our community is in full effect.
I got my shot, people. I'm safe from everything.
We hope so, but there are some things we still don't know about the vaccine, which we can talk about another time.
I'm not safe from everything?
Well, so quite happy tangent. Right now, it appears that the vaccines are helpful for most of the variants, but we're not sure. And remember, the vaccine is under emergency use authorization, so there are still things we don't know about it, including how long the vaccine lasts, or whether or not it actually helps to prevent transmission from one person to another. So it's 95% effective for the 2 to 3 months that it's been tested thus far, but we're still actively learning things about it. And so I take the agnostic position of, I want people to have factual information so they can make their own decisions, because I think that's important to build trust. And a lot of trust has been lost for the entire American population over the last 4 years, but for Black people in particular over the last 401. And so, so I think we just need to be really honest about how, what we know and what we don't. So we honestly can't say for sure if all the variants are covered. But we do know several of the variants increase transmission by up to 70%, even though you don't get more sick, but you're more likely to get it. So that's why I'm trying to be especially cautious about not doing indoor gatherings and not letting up on those precautions, because now is the time not to do that, so that we can eventually open back up.
My goodness.
Technically, we have arrived at tier 2, so that's exciting. That means teachers.
Do you mean tier 2, or do you mean tier 1B? Because
sorry, I apologize. That's tier 1B, which is the second tier of tier 1. But that does mean that people who are involved in education are now clear to receive vaccinations at such time as there are vaccinations available for them to receive.
Correct. Yes. And the only reason I say that is because it's so confusing, because they have, I think they're actually, I don't even think they're tiers. I think it's phases and then tiers within the phase. And I was like, what happened to just having one ordinal list that starts at 1, and just I think they don't want anybody to feel like they're not at the top.
So everybody is one something.
Everybody is phase
1B1, 1A1, 1A1-2. Yes, it's very confusing. Yes, it creates a substantial amount of confusion, and I appreciate Dr. Flo for raising up my sarcasm into intelligible conversation. I was excited that teachers are now eligible to be vaccinated, because God help everybody in Zoom school. So I just think we all need to remain both prayerful and hopeful that soon and very soon schools will be able to resume in their natural course of the buildings that they are intended for, and get Zoom school out of the living room.
Please. Please.
Because I'm quite confident that everyone's getting stupider by the minute. I this is absolutely no shade about Miss Brown's third grade class happening in the living room. I'm just saying that's not the way it's supposed to be.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are these kids going to talk about? I played with my mom for a whole year. That's not exciting. I met my mom in the living room.
And worse, if you've got like the third grade going on in the living room, and you've got the sixth grade going on at the kitchen table, and you've got like junior
high school
math happening in the bedroom. Everybody is operating off this.
Don't forget the college student
spot situation happening, you know, in their crappy little Chromebooks. I mean, quite honestly, the whole thing is a debacle. And we need to get back to our regularly horribly inept traditional school system.
One of the things that you know, because some of you know that I work with kids a lot, and so the kids that I still work with and speak to, I think they are forgetting that this is still school and that it still matters, and you know, some of them are thinking about moving on and graduating and getting into college or getting a good job. And so what matters in school, you know, will have an effect on them. And they're forgetting that because it doesn't seem real to them. It does not seem real.
Well, I think all of us are having that sort of dysphoria, because the reality is everybody who's been working from home and able to wear their pajama bottoms to their board meetings, and, you know, all the people that I have talked to, all of my girlfriends are like, I'm never putting on real pants again. Okay. How did we aspire to this? And while I understand deeply that notion, like, our goal is to never wear pants again. I don't, that makes me sad a little bit on the inside.
You know, I mean, I don't want to get too philosophical on this, but, you know, indulge me for a moment. Here's what I think is happening right now. I think we have gone so far in the direction of running ourselves into the ground that it's not so much that we never want to wear pants again, because we miss our friends, we miss our routines, we miss going to restaurants, we miss going to concerts, we miss those things, right? And all of those things require us to put on pants. But I think well, hopefully, I mean, like, listen, depends on how long the pants you talking about, because if it's the right party, you might think I don't have on some pants. But all those things require us to get cute, right? And we still like that. We still feel good about it. But what we're really saying is that 90-minute commute back and forth to the Bay to be in a 2-hour meeting can kick rocks. What we're really saying is, I want there to be some flexibility. I think, honestly, you know, to your point about opening schools, had we found some way other than remote education to do this, I think a lot more people would not be struggling right now, right? Because It's not just the being able to work from home. It's nice to wake up at 8:55, brush your teeth, slap your hair around, and be on your 9 o'clock meeting, right? And not have to have been up at 6 a.m. But it would also not be nice sometimes to be able to go and have coffee with a friend and do other things. And so I think capitalism has made all of this challenging for us. Right. Including the fact that instead of taking a year during a pandemic and just dealing with our own emotional needs, we all still even had to work and had to think about this. So we're trying to just come up with the best of both worlds, which is, how do we not end up being just completely taken over by the work that we have to do in order to live, and finding some semblance of happiness in it.
And I'm gonna echo you on that. I think that you're absolutely correct. And as a mom and a student, and somebody in the sensitive category, I will say that 90% of my time has been spent in my home. I would like to be outside without a mask, you know, and just live a life, you know. But what I think the pandemic did was it flipped a light switch. it made us like see where we were so far off direction and say, are those things that you're doing are truly important, or should you refocus and focus on this? So there is some positive in this pandemic that we can take away from, but man, just get me out the house. Like, I want to be able to go out the house without thinking about it, and just socialize. All those kids who are not able to play a sport right now because now we have to have procedures on how to drink from a water bottle, how to breathe the same air, how to tackle, these things matter. Health and wellness is important. And the pandemic, although it gave us some light, it took some things away. And we need to find that balance, that equality, in life. And that's what we need to do. That's
What?
just my little small little piece of it. Pandemic, thank you for allowing us to slow down and take a fresh air. I'm ready to go back now into the wild and, get dressed up, look cute, go to a concert. I'm done.
Well, Miss
What
Kim,
I
I would
what I'm
love
afraid
to
of,
have
guys,
experienced the slowed
and
down version of the
I think I get a
pandemic.
word in edgewise. Guys, I'm
Not
gonna
today. Not today,
not
Aaron.
today. Okay, go ahead, Robyn.
I was just saying that I would have loved to experience the slowed down version of the pandemic, but having worked in what are been deemed as essential areas for the duration of this time period, I feel like I've worked twice as hard. And
Mhm.
I'm super grateful to the fact that my children are older. So I don't have any kids in school right now because I can't even fathom being an essential worker and then having to negotiate that space of parenting and on a 24/7 basis with the academic piece attached to it. So there are certainly areas where we have gotten some very clear notions about what we want for our lives, aka no pants. I'm never wearing another pair of pants with buttons life. Like, there are some people who've achieved true clarity in that regard. But I think in other spaces, particularly folks who've had to navigate working from home, there is no off switch because you go straight from out of the kitchen washing the dishes into your 9 o'clock meeting, and then your 9 o'clock meeting ends a few minutes early, so you put a load in the washer to then sit down to your 10 o'clock meeting, and there's this cycle that is pervasive and invasive and has really created a great deal of tension and stress. Aaron, did you have thoughts?
I did have thoughts.
I really
As
do.
much as I see, yes, there are some benefits of the pandemic. Sure, there is, but we're talking about school, and I'm telling you that I worked with a bunch of young people who were all honor roll students. Every single one of them was an honor roll student. Ages 7 to 16, they were all honor roll students. Today, I asked them, and it's not the case. It's not the case. And they're all people of color. Now, you know that when things happen, it affects people of color differently than affects the other folk. Okay? And in terms of our competing in the real world, Zoom is not helping our people at all compete in the real world. It's
Yep.
too easier. I mean, it's too easy. It's too, it's too easy to get off track. And I'm a firm advocate of getting back into the schools. Do whatever you got to do, vaccinate everybody, but let's get schools back in business. The parents themselves were never, and this is kind of sad, but it's true, they were never prepared to be the child's primary teacher. Okay, they
Well, there's a reason why there's an educational element to be a teacher. I feel
yeah.
sorry for the kids who don't have a parent who may be able to read, write, and do arithmetic, you know. And then the kids that were going to school acting up, now them parents are able to say, look, that buffoonery you were doing, uh-uh, because I don't want to be a teacher no more. act right, get it together. That's what I mean by it was an eye opener in so many perspectives. It's like you don't get to go to school and be that bad kid, and mom and dad be like, okay, it's whatever. You can stay home with me a couple of days. No, 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 no. I had you for a whole year plus. You, I'm gonna need you to do right and be in that seat and stop acting up. Like I said, there's a lot of life learning lessons in this. And I feel, I applaud all the essential workers. I applaud you for staying focused and staying on that grind, because without you, we wouldn't even be where we're at right now. You made life still function in any way, shape, form, and fashion. I look at my family, I have 5 children, and all of them had to be full time. All of my kids worked through the pandemic. They're still working through the pandemic. They all have kids. So I understand the whole start your day in the kitchen, end the day in the kitchen, go to bed and try to figure out how you going to get that extra 5 minutes tomorrow. So I get that. The pandemic, like I said, it brought some things to light. And I hope that we continue to work towards making life better for all. And it also showed where we are last at. It showed that in the heat of turmoil, our leadership wasn't even ready for this.
Yeah.
That's the for shame part. You weren't ready to handle this.
I think our leadership was ready. I think they were ready for something different. So, I mean, we need to call a spade a spade. I think that the party that was in power at the time of the pandemic's onset in the United States signed up for exactly what they got. They are down for disparities. They have absolutely no interest in equity. There is no there for them, there's no crying in baseball, right? You pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and if you don't have bootstraps, so what? That is their entire philosophy.
Yep.
So it didn't matter that the populace was dying off, and it didn't matter that people didn't have resources, and it didn't matter that there was a widening technological and access to healthcare and access to education gap. They relish that. That's fine with them. I think the larger concerning factor for me is that their support wasn't eroded by the populace at that time. That there's still 54 million people in this country who were like, yeah, even though many of them were among the groups of folks who were dismissed. If you weren't wealthy in this country, they don't care about you. But yet, because white supremacy exists, and the white nationalism message has been carried forth, those folks really felt like, hey, we're part of the in crowd and we're part of the group because, we're standing up and standing down and all of the things. So that's the problem with the marketing and the messaging is that those who should feel disenfranchised drank the Kool-Aid and didn't realize that they were part of the group that was getting left behind.
Yep.
So we have time for one more comment on this, and Dr. Flo, I guess that'll be you.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I think Robynne hit the nail on the head. And I think Kim did too. Like, there is a way that there's a book called Dying of Whiteness. And I believe the author's name is Jonathan Metzl. And what was really fascinating, he looks at these 3 different topics. He looks at Medicaid expansion, gun violence and gun control policy, and then also education. And the basic premise of the book is that they're all in all of these instances, and he goes to communities, where people have been plagued by this, especially, gun violence, right? Like nobody wants to talk about the fact that if we reduce, the amount of guns that are available to everyone, the thing we impact most is suicide, right? And suicide most impacts white men. They are the most likely to kill themselves and the most likely to use a gun to do it. And even when they were in suicide prevention or suicide support groups for people whose family members had killed themselves with their own guns, there was an unwillingness to blame the gun, right? It's the way that we've constructed this. But the one that was most telling to me was when they were talking about Medicaid expansion. There was a man in the book who was part of one of the focus groups, and he was dying of a chronic disease where he could have lived longer and possibly not even died had he gotten, healthcare. And he was so committed to not wanting to extend that healthcare to Black people and Latinos and Indigenous folks and other folks who weren't white that he literally said he was willing to die for it. And before the book was published, he did. And that is how committed to inequity. He was just like, I don't believe in giving people free insurance. And so if that means I die, I die. Like, it really felt like I was watching Rocky again. Like, if he dies, he dies. And I was just like, except it was about himself. And I was just like, at that point, how do you rationalize with someone who's willing to let themselves? But that's why I always balk when people say people are voting against their interests or operating against their interests. He was operating in agreement, in alignment with his values. His value was that he valued white supremacy so much that he was willing to die for it. And I think that the more that we can maybe shape people's consciousness around that early on and their framing of what it means to be a human, what it means to matter, what it means to care for one another, I think that's the only saving grace to get away from that. And I think we saw that laid bare during a pandemic where people's health insurance was tied to their jobs and then they lost jobs. And it seems like we'd all be storming the streets, not to overturn the results of an election, but to be able to say, how dare you in one of the richest countries in the world not have a way for us to have health insurance when we don't have a job? Like, that seems like that would have been the obvious outpouring. And yet, and still the people most impacted are not necessarily on board. Whereas in the group of Black people, most of them were talking about how great it would be to have the Medicaid expansion and how excited they were to be able to go and get long overdue treatments. And these were Black men, a group that are not known for enthusiastically wanting more care, but they saw the opportunity in that. And so I think it's just, some of it is just socialization. And we need to think, to our point about education, to bring this full circle, we need to think about how we teach history, how we frame people's ideas about the world, because if we keep talking about the myth of the American dream and we keep framing these issues as being different from the reality that they live in, then people aren't taught to think well. And then literally it shows throughout the rest of their lives in terms of the political positions that they assume and the ways in which ultimately they literally die because of their ignorance.
Thank you very, very much. And wow, that was a mouthful, so much that we have to talk about what you just said. But you should know that this podcast is brought to you by Black History Month. We are in day 18, where it's brought to you by the people who brought us, Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and George Washington Cofer. Thank you. I'll let that soak in, because I was making a statement just then. Okay.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say brought to us by the folks that brought us Aaron Boyce, Robynne Haymer, and Dr. Flojuane Cofer and Ms. Kim Stevens, because we's part of Black history too.
Well, say, if I gotta spell it out, I will. And that is probably like you guys. When I was in school, Black History Month meant George Washington Carver, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King.
Yeah, they usually trotted those particular three people
Absolutely.
out.
I'm sorry, Harriet Tubman. We got some Harriet
Tubman a little bit, not big time, because they don't really want to talk about slavery loudly,
and certainly not subversive aspects of slavery.
Certainly not somebody who was totally like, what? Keep us in bondage?
Not the
like what Larry Wilcox said in his book, I'd rather we had casinos. My name is Aaron Boyce, host of the Square Biz Podcast here at Flower Square, where culture meets business. We're at 2251 Florin Road in the heart of South Sacramento on 24th and Florin Road. Happens to be Sacramento's Black-owned Wall Street, 1% minority-owned, 85% Black-owned, 60% women-owned. So we're here for you. We're here for your success. We're here for your business. So come on in, check us out, and by all means, check out Square Biz Podcast, coming to you on all forms of social media. And we are back, and this is Square Biz Podcast here at Florin Square. Now, I'm the only one at Florin Square, but it's okay. It's a Zoom Podcast. We are still Sacramento's Black Wall Street. And in fact, Robynne, you know that I am being modest when I say Sacramento's Black Wall Street. What I want to say is Northern California's Black Wall Street, because if you do the research, you'll see that there's not a whole lot of entities who are doing what we are doing here at Flojuane Square. 74 square foot building with
74,000 square feet.
74,000 square foot building. Thank you. 1,000 square foot building. I got excited. With 85% Black-owned businesses, 60% women-owned businesses, 100% minority-owned business, and the owner himself is African American. We are Northern California's Black Wall Street. And in fact, in the next issue of the newsletter, which is also called Square Biz, we're doing a tribute to the original Black Wall Street, and we are not including the massacre, because that's all everyone talks about is the massacre. It is important. It was awful, but there was life before that. And so we wanted to dedicate the pages of our magazine to the life that happened before the storm. So I think it's going to be an interesting read. And we're having an interesting podcast. I am Aaron Boyce, your host, and
I am Robynne Rose Haymer.
That worked. All right, cool. And we have two wonderful guests. One is my very good friend, Kim Stevens of the Stevens Foundation. Hey, Kim.
Hey, how are you?
All right. And then, why don't you?
My very good friend, Dr. Flojuane Cofer of the Everything, but mostly of Public Health Advocates. But everything, including chairperson of the Measure U Commission for the City of Sacramento, which is why we've invited her here today, happily, to talk about participatory budgeting.
Yes, we have. And so if you're like me and you're saying participatory budgeting, what's that? Well, why don't someone tell me, Dr. Flo, why don't you tell us what participatory budgeting actually is?
Gladly. It is a process wherein a municipal government, so whether it's your city or your county or even your state, honestly, sets aside a certain amount of money for people then in the community to then be able to decide directly what to do with. So typically the way our budgets are passed is that we elect people who then pass a budget. And sometimes they ask our input on certain aspects of the budget, but generally speaking, the elected officials are the ones who make the decisions. And in this case, they're essentially turning that back around with a specific pot of money. And then you work with your other neighbors and community members to figure out what the needs are in your community and how to spend those funds.
And so for those of you that are nonprofits working in the community, this is why you want to pay close attention.
Yep.
Tell me more.
This is all about you. The first thing that we want to teach you on today or talk to you about today is how to, when you say that you want to run a nonprofit, is more than just saying, I'm going to be a 501c3. You need to know what that truly means. That means to set up your bylaws, your operating procedures, and get to know your city government. Because there's a lot of benefits in that. There's facility assistance, there's resource assistance, and there's financial assistance. And so don't just say by name you want to do something. This is when you get down in the works of learning terminology, learning how things are processed. And what we're going to talk about to you today is participating budgeting. And there is a lot of benefits in that.
Well, now participatory budgeting sounds like a fancy way of saying we're going to put things out in the community. We're going to listen to the community. We're going to take notes. We're going to make lists. We're going to do other stuff and then do what we want to do anyway.
So that's not quite it.
Okay.
That's kind of the way that typical budgeting works. And to a certain extent that is true, right? If you have a really engaged set of elected officials. They may have some town halls and have conversations with people in the community, and then turn around and spend the money however they want to. And maybe they listen to you on a couple of things, but mostly they do what they want, and maybe they're upholding what we already have and just kind of moving forward in the way they want to. This is different in that they are setting aside a certain pot of money, and they are then not going to be the ones who are deciding how that money is being spent. They are committing when they set that money aside that however the community decides to spend the money, provided that it's legal and allowable, that they will then spend the money on those things. And so it is a very different way of doing budgeting. And it usually does not include the entire budget. It's usually a piece of the budget that's set aside for that purpose.
So then who is involved in this process?
Anybody in the community who wants to be. So when participatory budgeting is set up, you can decide, hey, I am a community member who lives there. I never want to run for elected office. I'm not even sure who my elected official is, but I want to come to these meetings and I want to participate in this because I really want to address the fact that the bike lanes are only in Midtown, but there's nothing for us over here. And there are a lot of people who are almost killing themselves trying to ride up Stockton Boulevard every day. Or I want to address the fact that when it's 110 degrees outside, a lot of people in my community catch the bus and there's no tree canopy here. Or I want to address the fact that there was no warming shelter that was opened up in my community when the storms hit and when there are extreme temperatures, hot and cold, and people in my community who are unhoused are dying. Or I want to address the fact that we don't have enough, mental health services in my community. And so we want to come together and find a way to be able to do community-based mental health services. So not just one-on-one, but the things that can keep our brains healthy prior to something going wrong. Like all of those things are projects you can engage in with participatory budgeting if you and your neighbors sit down and decide this is how you want to spend the money.
Therefore, the ultimate reason why we get active at those city council meetings. Do not sit at home and not invest in learning about our city government, learning how things work and function. Take a look of your surroundings. If you're at a park and you like to walk at night and there's no lights, what is that? A safety risk. So we need to not stop it just simply investing in the police and fire, which we totally need, but those things, those amenities in our community that we so desire to make life work for us. And so, yes, participatory budgeting is needed. It's worth it. And, just go to your city council meetings and get involved and get active. And make sure you're voting in people. Go to them polls and vote in the right people who are truly echoing your commitment, your desire. That's what we as community members, when you say, I don't have a voice, yes, you do. Every time you go to those polls and you check somebody off, there's your voice executed. Every time you go to a city council meeting and you step up, that's your voice. Even if they're not acting, that's your voice. Let it be heard. Let it resonate in their soul. But when you don't get live and active, there's no voice.
Okay, but Kim, I mean, I've been to some of these city council meetings before COVID. You go there, and now with COVID, right? And it's like 200 items, and you guys sit through 200 items because the item that you care about is number 198. Mm-hmm. Okay, it really reminds me of the graduation where you sit through the whole graduation just to hear one name, you go, yay! And then you're done, right? So, I mean, I can see where the community wouldn't be excited about that because there's so many things which they feel doesn't pertain to them. So
there's more to it than just the city council meetings, and city council meetings are important. So I don't want to discount the importance of attending and participating in city council meetings. Just recently in the city of Sacramento, there was a series of meetings around the children's budget that were convened because there was a very clear outcry at the beginning of the pandemic about the lack of resources for youth in the community surrounding Sacramento. So as a result of that, their city council member, Jay Schneer, convened a series of meetings. There were 4 of them that were around different topics specifically related to youth programming. And that's the participatory budgeting process, that where your voice is heard. So in that meeting, there weren't 200 items. There were only 4. And each of those meetings were 2 hours long, and they were in breakout groups. So then you were in a meeting with only 10 or 15 other people. And in those meetings, all of the ideas were coalesced into a single worksheet. And then at the end, there was a presentation about how those ideas were going to be ranked and then incorporated. And at each step, people could participate. So you could have gone to 1 meeting or 4. It's up to you. And then by attending the final meeting, you got the opportunity to participate in the ranking of those priorities. So it's still onerous in terms of it takes time, but it does not have to, you don't have to sit through changing trash day and all of the consent items on the agenda around public works contracts in order to have your voice heard. It's just important to stay abreast of what community meetings are happening. And actually, simultaneous to being here tonight, I'm listening to a council person's town hall meeting on the homelessness master plan for the Sacramento region. And that's another opportunity for participatory budgeting, because there is a good opportunity for input in all 8 of the council districts around the homelessness master plan. So just have to go to meetings.
Ms. Stevens, you know, you have your ear to the people. You know, you're very much in tune with the people, and I know that the people who you speak with, sure, they know how important it is, but how do you convince them that it is important for them to participate in these events? Sure, it's important, but let somebody else do it. How do you convince them that they need to step up and do it?
Well, the first thing is everyone says, Kim, can you go do that meeting for me? Can you go find that? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. But if you're going to be the one to share that information to your group, you need to hear it for yourself. It's all in the version of interpretation. So what I encourage volunteers is, if you're going to volunteer, know what it requires to volunteer. Become educated, become the guru of that particular element. You know, we just got to talking about the unhoused. You know, I work with Feed Sacramento Homeless. You know, you go talk to her and she can educate you on everything in regarding the homeless. But what we were missing was that element of meet your council members, and don't just meet your council member in your district, but meet all the council members. And that's another reason why I said, you know, those things partnership together, because even though I live in South Sac, I do business in North Sac, East Sac, West Sac. You know, I'm not limited to just where I reside. And so I talk to all the city council. I become educated in what's going on within the city and how to utilize it. Robynne, thank you for reminding me of Councilmember Chanier's workshop, because every last youth leader that I work with, I told them, I said, look, come to this meeting. It's important. Ask questions, listen in, and follow up. Because it's one thing to sit there and say, good job. But then when you're not being live and active, you'll hear me say this a lot, then what was your whole point of coming? If you're not going to walk away with something, then what was your your whole reason of attending? I don't want to hear you complain when you're not being live and active. You know, I don't want to hear the city council member didn't meet with me when you didn't go to his workshop. You're not going to city council meetings. You're not knocking on the doors. You know, I want to hear, Kim, I met with all of them people and we're getting stuff going. Or you know what? He's not the one. Go to the next person. Go to the next person. Keep going till someone hears you. And the best thing to do is don't just go one by yourself. get a crowd, get those people who are about giving back to the community. So when you go talk to that city council member and he see that there's 20, 30, 40 people behind you, he more than likely they're not going to tell you no, because now he got a group. So just, don't be afraid to push the envelope. Don't be afraid to go in those uncharted territories. Be live and active.
Yeah,
So, Dr.
absolutely.
Flo, what are things that you see? Because you're on the Measure U commission. In fact, you're the chairperson of the Measure U commission. But I see you involved in so many other, events as well. So can you share with me? Is there a disconnect or a connect between the city leaders, the city officials, and the community? Are they more connected or are they more disconnected?
I would say. I think that's not an easy question to answer a yes or no to. I would say that I think the council members are overall, and mayor are connected to certain community members. And I think therein lies the problem, because there is an access issue in terms of who is heard, who's invited to certain meetings, and whose voices are amplified. And I think part of the beauty of participatory budgeting as a project is that you're setting aside certain money and then you're taking away who out of the equation of whether or not you get funded. And now it's you talking to your peers and deciding together what recommendations you want to bring to the council, as opposed to you having to try to get the ear of a council member or the ear of the mayor or somebody to take hold of your idea. You're instead working with the other people in their community who may see the same issues you do and may want to have the same things happen. I think the other part of this, and this is, part of why I was both agreeing with Kim and also wanting to just highlight this piece of it, which is that I think that systems are designed perfectly to get the outcomes that they get. And what that means is that we see every community getting something different, and that something different often following along the lines of identity that we would expect, because the system is designed not to give us all what we need and not to support us all both equally or equitably. And equitably means according to what we need, and equally means getting the same thing. And we don't get either. And the system is designed for that purpose. And so while I totally agree with Kim that it's important to show up to things, and I would encourage people to get involved in all of that, I want to be super clear that it's confusing and hard on purpose. That instead of putting out a one-page budget document that has a pie chart on it and explains in simple terms in fifth grade education level how we spent the city's budget, you get a 480-page document with a whole lot of jargon in it that you have to have a degree in finance or accounting to be able to truly understand. And that's not a mistake. And so when we talk about community engagement, the engagement shouldn't only have to go from the people who are in the community to the elected officials. There's also a responsibility for the elected officials, not just to make room for their community members to talk to them, but to speak to them in a way that they understand. When I'm talking to other people who were public health professionals, I can launch into a conversation about cytokines and what we understand about cytokine storms and all these other things. Whereas if I were having a conversation with a layperson, that's not where I would start, because I wouldn't assume that they even know what a cytokine is. And so that's the important part that I think is missing, is who bears the responsibility for community engagement. And I love that communities engage themselves, put themselves in the middle and try to learn these things. But I also think it is absolutely imperative and should be required of our elected officials that they more than meet the communities halfway by putting out materials that are easy to understand, by having meetings at times that the communities can attend, by making sure that things are available to people who don't speak English, by making sure things are available to people who maybe are visually impaired or physically impaired in a time before, we were using Zoom, and probably the time after. All of those things are important. And when we don't make that possible, we are systematically excluding certain people in our community from being able to participate, and then we turn around and blame them for not having the willpower or the desire to participate, when really people participate more in things that you make easy for them to participate, right? In. There's a reason why it's easier to get a room at the Motel 6 than it is, at a fancy 5-star, place. It's by design. They don't want you there unless you have $1,000 a night. And so therefore you're not there. Whereas the Motel 6 will take you for $30 a night, right? And so that's the difference. And so it's more accessible. And they put Motel 6s in places along the freeway so you can get there. It's not tucked off in, the Tuscan Hills somewhere, right?
It's been
and
a
so
long time since you've been to a Motel 6. I don't think they're $30 anymore.
How much are they now?
I think they're like $80 or $90.
Oh, see, I was trying not to be out of touch. I was gonna say 56 exactly because that's how much it was when I last stayed at one. But I was also in the Midwest and I didn't account for California inflation, so my apologies.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Is that we're not intending to bring people in, and then it can almost feel as if it's our fault for not being more engaged, when I think the thing we should require of the people that we pay to represent us is for them to be more engaging.
And when you think about when you went to school, they said always speak in newspaper language. And when I first heard that it was actually from my teacher when I was in 8th grade. They go, always when you present something, think of writing a newspaper. And I flipped I'm like, what? And he's like, when you pick up a newspaper, it's transparent. It's something that everybody's able to connect with. They're not using jargon that is not understood. They're using language and terminologies that we use every day in most parts of our lives. So when you know that you're presenting to the public and you're using all of these X's and O's and things, and you're like, do you understand? You're looking like, no, go back to the beginning. And why you got all these papers and what's going on with this? It's too wordy. Just tell me, do we got some money? Yes or no?
And that, I think, is what Flo's point is that, it's intentionally exclusionary. And the intentional exclusion also is done with just a shade of gaslighting to make you feel as if you should be responsible or more accountable for being able to access the information and comprehend it. And when you don't, you're made to feel as if you have engaged improperly, or you've asked the wrong question, or even worse, that you have done harm to someone, particularly who holds public office.
How dare you?
Right, because you weren't savvy enough to negotiate that 480-page budget document.
Right.
The reality is there is a way to make it more plain speaking. There is a way to make information more accessible. And we have some laws that make it a requirement. I mean, there's the Brown Act that requires proper noticing of meetings so that folks do have an opportunity to understand what information is being disclosed in a meeting. And there also are a few grassroots leaders who are really committed to having meetings at times where people can attend them, and in forums and in places where they're able to attend. But the reality is the pandemic has done a lot toward emphasizing the otherness in our community. If you don't have good Wi-Fi right now, you are out of the game.
Yep.
As it pertains to being able to have a finger on the pulse of what's happening. If you are not really savvy in this Zoom environment, there are oftentimes you are locked out of being able to ask questions of presenters. There are times that your microphone is muted purposefully, so you can't get around the block to your physical speech. And so having a very clear understanding of the intentionality of the folks that you're working with is helpful. That's one of the reasons why I really respect and appreciate Flo sitting on the Measure U committee, because even in my educated, elevated state, I had to have a tutorial session and sit down and say, wait. Tell me how this money gets spent, because quite honestly, it wasn't clear at all. And I mean, look, I've got no pencil problems. I am not a slouch in the classroom. I have an amazing vocabulary and my reading level is high. And I still was like, what?
Let me just tell you, Robyn, you know how I met Flo? Let me tell you. So again, I'm getting live and active back in the community. I'm going to these meetings and everything. I attended to Measure You. I immediately sent her an email, right? Now, the week following, there's a city council meeting. I sent this heated email, right? And I was like, look, I'm not going to be ignored. You're not going to ignore me. Somebody going to listen to me. And Flo, I just want you to know, until you responded to that email, all of a sudden other people's emails began to work. All of a sudden that email that I sent was able to be read. But up before she responded, nobody could read. Nobody knew how to open up an email. No one understood that Kim Stevens, when she asked a question, she gonna keep knocking until she get an answer. And I felt so bad because I was like, look, I don't know what's going on. I put her on. I was like, somebody needs to explain this to me. She picked up the phone and she began to let me explain what's going on. I want to make sure you understand. And once she explained it, I was like, why didn't they just say that? What's all this other stuff why y'all trying to cloud and bring all this fog in here? She said it in less than 2 minutes.
But you know why, Kim?
I
If you
understood why.
explained it in plain speaking language, then we would all understand and have access to the information.
Correct.
And it's not designed, the system is not designed for everyone to have access.
Correct.
And so I appreciate you, Dr. Flo.
Can we agree that there are limited funds that any municipality has at their disposal?
I don't even agree with that. I think that everyone can decide what the cap on the spending in each area is. And in plain language, in some cases, that's limitless. If you think about what is currently being spent on the children's budget, which, Flo, I don't want to misspeak the number, but it was what, like 8.9 million or something like that?
So yeah, so it's supposed to be a total of $10 million being spent on youth, but I think the amount that has been set aside for this purpose is $6 million.
6 million.
Oh, no. I found out today. Let me tell you, we're not getting 6 million. It's 2.5. That's what I just heard. Yes. I'm waiting for him to make that announcement because they're still giving money to fire. They're still giving money to police out of that 10 million. Yes. And when I tell you that I sit here right now irritated because I work with, and I'll just speak of one element of what I do in youth football and cheer. When I think about each one of those 8 organizations that are just in the city of Sacramento, I serve all of Northern California. Just these 8 organizations, they have at least 300 to 400 kids and staff members on their organization. So you do the math. Let's just do 300 times 8. You mean to tell me that they're not eligible for none of that money that has been granted to our city that's supposed to go to our youth? These are youth, kids ages 5 to 14. How much of a youth do you want? And then you're complaining that they're in the streets tearing up stuff, but you're taking away from their programs. Get them their money. Stop playing.
Well, I think part of the problem is this moving target, and I think both Flo and I right now are in stunned disbelief because we both sat in multiple meetings where there was a vastly different number discussed. We did start with the $10 million figure, and I know that there were a variety of factors that influenced it being less than that. I thought I heard 8.9. Flo just said she'd heard 6 million, and now it's being elevated that it is actually 2.5. So to your original question, Aaron, about limited funds, that's not accurate. There is $10 million in the budget to allocate.
Yes.
There is.
There is.
They are not choosing to allocate $10
Correct.
million.
And so that was the scope of where I was going to when they are reaching out to the community, and the community wants they want things to happen in their community for their community, and the city, which I keep hearing again and again and again, is allocating those same funds for police and fire services, which we all know are important, right? But it wasn't meant for, it wasn't meant for police and fire services. It was meant for community. And I'm seeing more and more, a lot of community members are getting very, very disenchanted. And I think that's a very good word, disenchanted with the process, because it seems like the promises are made and then the money suddenly magically dissipates.
It's like my question is why are we paying for so many consultants? Why are we paying, like, every time I turn around, we had to pay a consultant. I'm like, why are you sitting in your seat if we do not know how to exercise or utilize members of our community? And you're just taking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and you're putting it into other things when there's internal support and resources right here. And
well,
then
I think, Kim, one of the things that's concerning, it's not just the allocation of resources, because I definitely understand your perspective around the consultants. There are some specializations that we couldn't afford to staff, and so sometimes you have to purchase services. So that's one thing. But where I'm really working hard to maintain my composure and my professionalism right now is around assurances and promises that are made to the community when it comes to bigger numbers. Because in a city or municipal budget that is hundreds of millions of dollars, a couple 100,000 isn't a big deal. But when you start talking about $4 or $5 million differences, this is where eyebrows should get raised. This is where I believe that we need to get more clarity, because I don't have any patience for being lied to.
I agree, and I would take that even one step further. So I definitely agree with you that there is sometimes expertise that does not exist in our elected officials or even in our city staff that we can, look externally for. I think that's especially important when it comes to maybe our community engagement, because our nonprofits seem to do that really well on a shoestring budget, and yet our folks who have budgets, right, to be able to do outreach struggle with it. The flip side of that, though, is that I am tired, and I'm going to call some specific things out. I am tired of paying $500,000 for reports that then sit on shelves like the Management Center report or like the Scale Up report that just came in. Because my feeling is part of the reason why they're not useful is because it's a good way for the council and the mayor to look like they're doing something without having to actually do something. So They study it to death. Because if I look at this management partners report that was published in March of 2020, there are 39 very concrete recommendations in there. And with the exception of a response memo that came out from City Manager Howard Chan in response to all 39 saying whether the council needed to take action or whether or not he agreed with them, zero action has been taken on those 39 recommendations that were made over a year ago and that we paid $500,000 for. And that's the kind of thing that, to Kim's point, I think is a waste of money. Don't spend money on things that you're not actually going to take under advisement. And if you're not, and if you're going to spend the money, there should be a clear vision that comes along with why you're spending the money. So don't ask for ways to save money if then you're going to turn around and say, well, we don't want to take recommendation 39, which is to look at binding arbitration of the police and fire contract. Don't come and say, I want to pay you all this money. And then when you get recommendations that are about saving money and about doing the things you said, you don't want to do them. Give them clear instruction on what the parameters are of whatever they're going to be doing, and then be committed to taking action. And some of that has to do with, I just don't think the city or the county of Sacramento have a clear vision, right? There's this idea that they bring money in and then they just pay for the things we've always paid for and do the things we've always done. And every now and again, some folks like Robynne and Kim and Aaron make a big enough stink about something that they decide to skim a little off the top and do a little something extra so that you Negroes will go away and stop fussing at them and sending them emails and showing up to stuff. But in general, I don't see a vision for the city of Sacramento or for the county of Sacramento that says, I would like for us to live in a space that is safe. And what safe means to us is that we invest enough in all of these different preventive mechanisms so that a child born today, February, what's today, the 18th of 2021, by the time they turn 18, lives in a space where they are not subject to violence, where they have job prospects and where they have, the ability to care for their family, where their air is clean and their water is clean, and they, have affordable housing, right? And in order to do that, we're going to take 10% of each budget and we're going to invest in some future-minded things. And then we're going to take another 20% of the budget and we're going to invest in some reparative and restorative things. And then we're going to spend the other 70% of the budget on our ongoing services that we need to make sure that you have water and garbage services and all the things that we need right now. But if there's no future vision, then you spend all your money on the stuff we need right now and you don't have any savings. So essentially what the city and county of Sacramento are people who sit back and say, I want to make a big purchase. But then every month, spend all of their money and sometimes and then some on right now. And then when you look up in a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, you don't have enough money to buy the big purchase because you never saved up, invested in making that happen. And that's how our cities work right now and our county.
And to add insult to injury.
Everybody, please, let me stop everybody because we only have maybe 10 minutes left or so. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to get everybody's, let's say, action plan. One for the city officials and one for the community. What should they do to make the participatory budgeting program work in their favor and the city's favor, mutual? So I want you guys to think about it. What should be done by both entities to make this work? While you're thinking about it, I wanted to mention that this is Square Biz Podcast at Flojuane Square, Sacramento's Black Wall Street, 2251 Florin Road. Please come in. We have a plethora, that's my second time using that word, by the way, of great shops, nonprofits, for-profits, all minority owned, all waiting to serve you, all waiting to put a smile on your face. And of course, the African, the Sojourner Truth African Heritage Museum. Our big grand opening is March 20th. Stay tuned for more information about that. But you, the listener, are definitely invited. One last thing, and that is the Flojuane Square Community Development Corporation is our nonprofit arm of Flojuane Square. And right now we are accepting MOUs, or as Kim said, it's what's the thing that you said instead of MOUs, Kim?
Community agreement.
Yes.
Community agreements. Yes. Community
memorandum of understanding
agreements with nonprofits so that we can do better work together as one entity instead of separate as 100 entities. So you can reach out to Kim Stevens, and her phone number is
916-868-5000.
Or Aaron Boyce at 916-215-1831. So that's the Flojuane Square Community Development Corporation looking to collaborate with you, the nonprofits of the area. Okay, so here we go. Dr. Cofer, you're going to go last. So Here we go. Let's start with Miss Stevens.
Well, please forgive the disrespect, but I'm gonna go another direction. My call to action is simple: unite and empower. It is time for us to stop actioning as one and actioning as a group. There's definitely strength in numbers. Those of us who don't know everything, there's something that you know that I don't know, and coming together will make us more power and dynamic. My hope is that we put fire underneath our city council and other city leadership, city and county, to let them know we're not going away and change must happen and it needs to happen now. We may not get everything that we want, but we first got to make them listen. And in order to make that happen, is that we got to come together and unite and become educated in what we are doing. We do not all have to do the same thing, but we all have to champion one thing, and that's love and protect our community.
Thank you. Ms. Robynne.
So, specifically, my hope for our community leaders is that they begin to engage in both honest and clear dialogue with the community. And what do I mean by that? There are oftentimes shades of the truth or versions of the truth that folks want to tell, but I am imploring our community leaders to tell the honest, clear truth. And what I mean is, if there's a 400-page report or a one-page report, let's put out the one page. If there is a meeting that has a purpose, let's just be clear about what that purpose is so people who are interested can attend. So be as plain speaking and inclusive as possible. So that's my hope for our community leaders. My hope for our community is that we continue to educate ourselves. Um, at Earlier in the segment, Flo talked a lot about where we were and where we came from, and a book that has just been raised up to my attention is Stamped from the Beginning: The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram Kendi. And I think many of us don't understand how we got here, and so it's very helpful. I don't know what famous author said this, but the man who does not know his history is doomed to repeat it is a very common refrain in our past. And the reality is, we need to know where we started so we can figure out where we are, so we can find a way forward. So in order for us to be able to articulately participate in participatory budgeting, we got to know where we came from. So read, understand historically where we've come from. And it could be whatever your niche is. If you're interested in affordable housing, then learn more about redlining, figure out about gerrymandering. If you want to know more about clean air and clean water, let's talk about some of the historical contributions to that, those issues. But make sure you're learning about what your issue is from its origin and onset, so that when it comes time to start making decisions, you have some innovations and some ideas to be able to share with the community.
Thank you, Ms. Robynne. And Dr. Flojuane, which is French, I might add, Cofer.
I mean, I love what your co-host and the other guest this evening have shared with everyone. I think my follow-up to that would be that there are ways, Kim alluded to this earlier, to organize. And so I would strongly encourage people to get involved in at least two of the things that are happening locally. One is called the People's Budget. The website is peoplesbudgetsac.com, and you can do everything from just taking the survey so that your voice is part of that echo of voices that is saying this is how the money should be spent, in our city as well as in our county. Or you can volunteer to be part of the group and actually do some of the work to get out and help to educate the rest of the community on how the budget is spent, and make sure that we're including those voices that are historically and in an ongoing fashion left out of that process. The other one is called the Social Justice Politicore. And that one is an opportunity for people in the community to attend some of these meetings. And when you do, to write up in lay terms, as Kim said earlier, in newspaper language, what happened at those meetings, so that other people in the community who couldn't attend don't have to sit down and watch a 6-hour meeting to find out what happened on that one particular item that they were interested in. And it's a way, lots of people say this, but Kula says it the most of all my friends, Kula Koenig, and she says, many hands make light work. And so if you can take some time out to attend one of those meetings every couple of months, and you recruit 5 or 6 of your friends to do the same thing, then you don't have to attend every meeting, because there's somebody there who's representing our interests and reporting back and making sure that we stay in the know. And it's just one of the, I like to say, not quite subversive, but kind of subversive ways that we get around the fact that we've been pushing the city and the county to have meetings at more accessible times, to make the language in the agenda and make the minutes more accessible, and to let us know what's really happening in real language. And so we're just like, you know what? I'll do it myself. And so it's a great way to be able to be a part of that. And the more people that we have participating, the better it is in terms of everyone's overall knowledge, engagement, and ability to be able to advocate, and to ask for what we deserve.
And I'm so happy that you rose up the Politicore, because Kula was with us at one of our previous podcasts in person, and so got an opportunity to get a little snippet of that too at that point. So of course the brilliant Dr. Flo has reminded us of our own brilliance in our guest choosing. So wait, I'll game recognize game. I always appreciate it when you give us snaps.
So here's my take. I've been in the game here in Sacramento for over 30 years. And when I first started, there were some movers and shakers, people who were doing things, making noise, keeping vigilant, keeping watch. And to a small degree, I joined that rank and file in my own way. Well, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now today, we seek the new guard. Not necessarily those who are teenagers or 20s or 30s, but those who are new to the process, who are finding the voice, who are using the voice, who's making noise. The summer of last year was a prime example of how that works and the power that has, not just here in Sacramento, but all over the country, all over the world. And we need to support those who are making noise. We need to advocate for those who are making noise. We need to make sure that the noise that they are making is heard and joined in by other noise makers, because that's how things are going to continually to get done. It was done in the 50s. It was done well before the 50s, and it's done today. And so I'm not saying at all that this is an adversarial situation between the community and the city officials. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that they need to hear, they need to know, and the only way they're going to hear and know is to have people like Kim Stevens and Dr. Flojuane Cofer, and of course, soon to be Dr. Robynne Rose Haymer, do what they do, be vigilant and make noise. And I salute you guys. And I say, keep on trucking, keep on doing what the community needs.
Thank you
Woo,
for the
woo.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yay.
This was a pleasure.
So this is it. We spoke very briefly about the pandemic, and you're right. I did not know that we had, somebody so well versed on that subject, but I know now. And so I'm going to beg, cajole, and plead to have Dr. Cofer return. We'll pick a day and time so that we can talk about that, especially about the reluctance of people of color to receive the vaccine. And I would love to hear your opinion on it. Not now, because I know you want to talk. I can see it in your eyes, okay? But when you return, that's a conversation that I think needs to be had. Robynne?
Aaron?
Last words?
Last words. Thank you to our guests, Kim Stevens and Dr. Flojuane Cofer, for gracing us with your presence and imbuing us with your knowledge and your grace. It's so wonderful to be able to spend time with you, pantsless in this environment. And I thank you, my friend Aaron, as always, for making this platform available to us to share and preach.
And you have been listening to Square Biz Podcast here at Flower Square, St. Mel's, Black Wall Street. I am your humble host, Aaron Boyce, and
Robynne Rose Haymer.
And we bid you peace, love, and yes, soul.
Hair grease.
Bye-bye, guys.